what you get is essentially the difference of what a documentary and a narrative feature offers. Again, I think with narrative features, you can select the key factors, what made that person strong. And again, this is very, very dependent upon casting, upon the performance and the direction of that actor, and the writer capturing the very essence of that person's accomplishments and intentions and soul.
Hello, powerful people, and welcome back to the Power at Work blog. My name is Seth Harris. I'm a senior fellow at the Burns Center for Social Change, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to Labor Oscars 2024. These are the movie awards that focus on workers, worker power, unions, and collective action. We don't have a red carpet. I'm not going to torture you with an unfunny monologue. But we do have three terrific guests to talk about labor in the movies and to help us announce the winners of the Worker, our virtual award in each of 5 movie categories. The winners were chosen by you, the Power at Work blog's subscribers and other friends of the blog. We'll be joined by Andrea Lyman, a distinguished actor and the New England local president of SAG-AFTRA, the Union for Movie and Television Actors, among others. We'll also be joined by Harold Phillips, an actor, voice artist, podcast host, and SAG-AFTRA member. And our final guest will be Jennifer Merin, a movie critic and co-founder of the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. But before we start our award show, I'm very proud to tell you that the Power at Work blog is a member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. The Labor Radio Podcast Network connects over 100 radio shows and podcasts. To learn more about the network and to find other labor radio shows and podcasts, visit www.laborradionetwork.org. Now, our guest, Harold Phillips, is one of the coordinators of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, but let me tell you, we would have given them some shout-outs anyway, even if Harold were not here. Let me also say that if you want to listen to any or all Power at Work blogcasts, they're available for streaming and download on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast. Just search Power at Work on any commercial podcast provider and enjoy all our content. And while you're there, would you give us a 5-star rating? That will help other people to find our content. It'll make us feel good about ourselves and let us know that you appreciate the content that we're putting out there. We will be grateful. The people you share it with will be grateful as well. So we're going to talk about labor movies, and we're going to announce the winners of Labor Oscars 2024. The Labor Oscars 2024 was the Power at Work blog's effort to lift up movies about workers and worker power, collective action, and unions. Movies have influence. They shift perceptions about our world, and they bring attention to important issues, even if they do it through comedy or through music or through serious drama. If we can advance the cause of worker power by lifting up other people's work and have fun doing it, well, count us in. And that's what the Labor Oscars are all about. Now, let me remind you how the Labor Oscars got started. On February 4th, we published a list of labor movies on the Power at Work blog. We thought that would be the kind of resource you might just want to have. It was kind of a throwaway. And, we just thought, yeah, what the heck? It's a little service we can provide to our readers. Well, we were right that you were going to like it. This labor movies post that we put up back in early February is the most popular post we've ever published on the Power at Work blog. So you, our viewers and our readers, essentially told us that you wanted more. On February 18th, because we believe in democracy, and we love our subscribers and our other friends, we invited you to vote for a winner in each of 5 film categories: Best Feature Film, Best Documentary Film, Best International Labor Film, Best Worker Power Profile of a Small Group or Individual, and the Worst Movie about unions. By the way, you won't find that category in the Academy Awards. And you certainly did vote. Now, we got a few votes on social media, but we got a lot of votes from our subscribers and friends of the blog through a survey that we circulated. Just a quick aside, we are going to do this again, and not just with respect to movies. So if you want to participate, you want to make sure that you get a survey through email, please go and subscribe to the Power at Work blog, and that'll make sure not only that you get a survey request in the future, but also that you can keep up with all our great content. Okay, little advertisement. Now, during this blogcast, we're going to reveal the movies that you chose to be the winners of the vaunted Worker. Of course, we're a not-for-profit blog. We're run almost entirely by volunteers, so we don't have the money for big, fancy gold statuettes, right? It's basically a graphic, and you're going to see the graphic, and it's a very lovely graphic that we put together. But so our winners are not actually going to get something they can put on their mantle, but they will get the acclaim of the Power at Work blog. They'll get the acclaim of our subscribers and our friends, and they'll get the acclaim of tonight's guests, who are very prominent people in the world of entertainment. And they'll also hopefully get your attention, and maybe you'll even watch their movies. Now, let me also say, when you launch an award show like this one, you need expert help. I love movies. I love worker power. I know a little something about worker power. I don't know much about movies. I know what I like. I don't know a lot about movie making or movie acting, certainly, or movie producing, anything like that, although we happen to have it in the family. So we brought together 3 film experts who also have a connection to workers and worker power. They'll help us to discuss our nominees, talk about labor movies and movies more broadly, and they'll give us their choices for who they would want to win the Worker. Andrea Lyman is the New England local president of SAG-AFTRA. She's a co-director of the Actors Forum of the Secret Society of Black Creatives. She's a member of the executive board of the Boston Labor Council and the Roxbury International Film Festival. She's acted in numerous films and performs a one-woman musical show called Broadway Lady that's shown throughout Massachusetts, New York City, Los Angeles, and internationally. Harold Phillips is an actor. He's a voice artist. He's a podcast host based on the West Coast. He's worked in theater, film, and television for over 30 years, and he's an active member of SAG-AFTRA as well. He's also the host of 2 podcasts, Working to Live in Southwest Washington and Labor Week. And he's one of the coordinators, as I mentioned earlier. He's a coordinator of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, of which the Power at Work blog is very proudly a member. Jennifer Merin is the film critic for Women's E! News and president of the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, a not-for-profit organization of leading women film journalists in the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. She writes the Cinnamon Citizen blog for AWJF and helms the AWJF Women on Film, the organization's online journal. She's been a film reviewer for New York Press and Soho News, and a columnist for a long list of publications: the Associated Press, Tribune Media Services, Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, my hometown paper of Newsday, as well as being a film and culture reporter for Westwood One Radio, CBS Radio Networks, and NBC Radio Network. So we've got a very, very, very distinguished group of guests for our first ever award show. Those are our guests. You are our audience. Now it's time for Labor Oscars 2024. Enjoy. Well, welcome to all 3 of you to the first Labor Oscars. I don't know if it's the first annual. We'll have to see how it goes. Let's be honest. And it's a star-studded blogcast. So thrilled to have all of you here. Let me say we're going to dispense with my opening monologue, even though Bruce Valanche and I worked on it for weeks. Aww. And the big musical number that we were going to do, we're going to put that aside as well, because there's no room in my home office for all of those musicians. So we want to get right to the reveal of the winners in our 5 categories, but really what we want to do is to get you talking about movies and labor movies, because we think our audience is just dying to hear from expert guests like you about these movies and about movies in general. So we're going to talk about the awards of the movies, but I have some questions that I want to ask you. Nobody gets away for free here. Everybody has to do a little bit of work as part of the labor Oscars. It's the labor Oscars, not the regular Oscars. So we're going to jump right in to our first category, and I'm going to work backwards. So that means, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, because I don't want Harold to get upset. He insisted we have our winners right here in our gold envelopes ready to go. And we didn't share this. We don't have an accounting firm. We're a not-for-profit blog, for goodness sakes. But okay, so we're going to work backwards. Our first category is worst movie about unions, and the nominees are Inside Detroit from 1956, directed by Fred Sears; The Pajama Game from 1957, directed by George Abbott and Stanley Donen; Boxcar Bertha, 1972, directed by Martin Scorsese; Fist from 1978, directed by Norman Jewison; and Hoffa, directed by Danny DeVito from 1992. Okay, so Harold, I'm going to start with you because you flamed me on Twitter.
I totally did.
You flamed me on Twitter about this category. So I know you have strong opinions about it. So talk about any of these movies, but we also want to know what your pick is in this category.
Well, so the inside baseball for folks who don't follow Seth on Twitter or me on Twitter is I have kind of a problem with Fist being in the worst movie about a union category. Now, is it cheesy? Yes. As a very thinly veiled biography of Jimmy Hoffa, is it completely inaccurate? Of course. But it was the 80s, man. It was the era of action movies. And, when push comes to shove, being in a union kicks ass. And every once in a while, you need a movie about being in a union that kicks ass.
Okay.
Sorry, you're going to have to put a content warning on that because I said kick ass.
No. I don't think we will, actually. I think that's okay. Okay, so what was your pick in this category? Which was your worst movie about unions?
Oh, there were some real bad movies in this. I mean, The Pajama Game enrages me with the fire of 1,000 white-hot suns. Just the idea that this labor person can't help but fall in love with the manager, and then at the end, spoiler alert, the boss finally gives in and the workers give him a fashion show. I mean, by the end, I was just seething. But Inside Detroit, man, that is just a stinker. That is awful. And there were a lot of bad B movies in the 1950s. This is bad for a bad B movie in the 1950s.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you on a lot of that stuff in just a minute. Jennifer, you critique movies for a living, and there are a lot of ways that a movie can be bad. Maybe too many ways that a movie can be bad. So tell us which you think was the worst movie about unions, and tell us why you think it was bad.
Especially when it comes to movies with labor as a theme, I'm very particular about how labor is represented and how a film is contextualized. And I would say for that reason that The Pajama Game is, for me, as Harold said, horrific. It's so cute and it's so la 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 la. I mean, this is not what labor's about. And I almost object to calling it a labor film because it's so off key. And I find I actually went back to watch it because I was concerned about it. Hoffa, to be really misrepresentative of labor. I mean, I'd hesitate to call it a labor film. I know that labor's involved, But that and The Irishman, also, which is not on your list, they are very bad. They're not focused on what labor accomplishes or what unions accomplish. They're focused on the corruption that surrounds them, that comes from actually pressure from the outside usually. And of course, complicity with union leaders. We've seen all of that, and we know that that's a factor. But I would prefer to see labor films that show what the unions, what collective bargaining can actually accomplish, especially because we have so much difficulty with it. And especially in view of the success of the actors' strike and WGA's strike this year, which was extremely effective, I'd like to see films that show collective bargaining that works.
Yeah, that's a great point, and we're going to see a lot of those kinds of films in our later categories. Okay, Andrea, so you're a film actor.
Yeah, I got to tell you right away. Not just a film actor. Musical theater. I grew up on musical theater. I majored in musical theater. Just the other day was listening to Steam Heat and Hernando's Hideaway. I have the CD of Jim in my car. I love it. 7.5 cents doesn't mean a heck of a lot. I mean, I know it's got all the tropes and stuff like that, but I love it. It's got the best numbers. I mean, Steam Heat and Hernando's Hideaway and all the other ones. I know it's missing the whole labor point and all of that, but I'm not going to have it on my worst list. I'm just
okay. No. So what did you pick? And here's my question for you: can you have a good performance in a bad movie?
Of course you can. Of course you can. But it's just that because I'm musical theater and because it has such fantastic numbers, I am not able to put it at the bottom, even though it's missing the point and it has the, fall in love trope and all that kind of stuff. But it's always going to be Steam Heat and Hernando Highway. Hoffa,
I got you.
I would say out of the ones you picked, Hoffa, just because, it did. It just made it all about violence and, so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to circle back and defend myself from Harold's attack on my attack on Fist. So here's my take on Fist, and let me just say this was a wading through mud in this category. This was just a terror. There are a lot of bad movies in this category, and I'm not going to disagree with anything anybody said about those other movies. Although I think the music is great in Pajama Game, but the story is I agree, kind of a problem. Okay, so Fist. So this is from my teen years, so dating myself. I thought Stallone's performance in this movie was just horrible. I think there are some things that he's really good at, and this was just not one of them. This was just, I thought his performance was just horrible. I think it tacitly endorses violence, and it sort of takes a fascist take on unions. I'm all for unions kicking ass, Harold, but not literally violently. I just think that's the wrong image of how to win in this case. And it largely forgives Stallone's character for being corrupt. It's like he's sort of a dupe, but he's not a dupe, and he's the leader, and he's the smart guy. So this is, I'm with all of you in saying this is not a movie I want people learning about unions from. And it shows, let me just say, you can have a great writer and you can have a bad movie. So what are you going to do? Okay, so let's go to the winner. The Worker goes to, in the category of worst movie about unions. Oh, let's see if I can open that. Here we go.
It's harder than it looks, doesn't it?
It's complicated. I see it on all these award shows, and now I'm actually experiencing it. The Worker for worst movie about unions goes to Hoffa from 1992, directed by Danny DeVito, starring Jack Nicholson. And again, you can have a great writer write a bad movie, written by David Mamet, right? One of the great American writers. May not love his politics, but the guy can write. So Hoffa, good for you. Those of you pointed out Hoffa. Okay, let's go on to our next category, which is Best Worker Power Profile, parentheses, small group or individual, right? Because we wanted to include movies about small groups that were really important in labor history. So this is basically the best biopic category. And the nominees are Union Maids, which is from 1976, directed by Julia Reichert and Jim Klein. 10,000 Black Men Named George, from 2003, directed by Robert Townsend, a biopic about A. Philip Randolph. Brothers on the Line from 2012, directed by Sasha Ruther. It's about the Ruther brothers. Sasha Ruther is Victor Ruther's grandson. Cesar Chavez, An American Hero from 2014, directed by Diego Luna. And Rustin from just this past year, 2023, directed by the great public theater auteur George C. Wolfe. Okay, Andrea, I'm going to start with you. So we want to hear your pick in this category, but I want to draw on your extensive acting experience. So Coleman Domingo from Rustin has been nominated for several awards this year, including the Academy Award, and I thought he was absolutely brilliant as Bayard Rustin, a complicated role, and he is a complicated actor, and I thought did a beautiful job. So does a biopic depend entirely on the strength of the performance of the leading actor? If the leading actor's performance is horrible, the movie is not going to be good. But is really the biopic all about the leading actor?
No, not necessarily. Not for me. Although I did love Rustin, and not just Coleman, who was fantastic, but Jeffrey Wright. I mean, just a ton of excellent performances in Rustin. Spoiler alert, I'm going to vote for that later on. But for me, sometimes it's, are there surprises in the film? Are there things I didn't know? How much have I learned? So that's why I'm torn between that and the 10,000 Men Named George. I really love that one. So I think since I'm spoiler alert, picking Rustin later on, I'm going to pick 10,000 Men Named George, because people might not otherwise see it. And sometimes when things win something, it makes somebody look it up.
Yeah,
and,
I'm
find
with you.
out.
I only found 10,000 Men Named George on YouTube. It's a Showtime production, but it's not available on any streaming service, including Showtime. So you have to find these things on YouTube. Some of the movies that we nominated actually are not available. I'm hoping people will say, I would like to see this. They'll put it on their watch lists, and that will get the streamers to include them. So Jennifer, I also want to hear your pick. So we got one vote for Rustin. But let me ask.
Wait a minute, no. I voted for 10,000.
Oh, 10,000. I'm sorry, 10,000. No, okay. My mistake.
Controversy at the Academy.
This is like, what was the year when they read out the wrong
and La La Land that they
they read out the wrong name, the name of the wrong movie. I'm not going to do that because I haven't touched the envelope. I want you to know. Okay, Jennifer. Yeah. So we want to hear your pick. Okay, so let me ask, how much should we care about the accuracy of a biopic? Is it, if it's truthy, right, that the old Stephen Colbert term on his original television show on Comedy Central, if there's truthiness, if you're telling a great story, is that just good enough, or do you really have to stick to the literal facts?
I am afraid that I'm a literal facts kind of gal. I think that, just switching off for a moment, on your long list, you have two films, one of which is fiction, one of which is a documentary. They're about substantially the same thing. And then there's a third film that also fits into that category. I'm talking about Harlan County, Matawan, and North Country. All about mining conditions, mining strikes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a place for every single one of those movies in the theater, on television streaming. I would recommend them as a binge. because what you get is essentially the difference of what a documentary and a narrative feature offers. Again, I think with narrative features, you can select the key factors, what made that person strong. And again, this is very, very dependent upon casting, upon the performance and the direction of that actor, and the writer capturing the very essence of that person's accomplishments and intentions and soul. So anyway, that's my thought. In terms of these, I knew Bayard Rustin. I was a member of the AFSC, and he was a very big factor in our thinking, our work, and I think that the performance was really good, and I am very, very glad that this film was made, because I, who knew Bayard Rustin, was shocked that so few people knew of him. And it is time for him to be recognized. He was sort of set aside for political reasons, I guess you want to call it that. And that should never have happened. And I've seen it, I've seen the film now at 3 different screenings, and I always ask, did you know about Bayard Rustin? Young African Americans. I never knew. I never heard of him. And to me, that's a shame. So I'm very glad that this film is being recognized here. And I hope that more people will see it because of the awards recognition of Coleman and of the film itself and George Wolfe's work on it. I also, for me, I also lived through Cesar Chavez. And this film really resonates with me, because I think that there are still issues that are raised, and it shows how one person who has the stamina and the strength can really guide a labor movement and stimulate, if you will, inspire, better word, inspire workers to stand up for themselves, which many are so, yeah.
Well, so which is your pick? Is it Rustin? Is it, because you seem to like all of these films. Which is do you have one pick, or you like them all? Uh-oh. I didn't know that was going to be such a hard question.
Can I do a tie? I mean, I love labor leaders. I love labor leaders in general. I mean, the good ones. Can I do a tie, please? Yeah.
Yes, you can do a tie. Absolutely. Okay.
Thank
very
you.
good.
Thank you for indulging me.
No, well, it's the labor Oscars. We really don't have any rules here. I mean, let's be honest. Okay, Harold, I want to ask you what your pick is, but how much does your admiration for the figure who's being depicted in the film drive your view of the movie, or are you able to sort of detach that from your view of the movie as a movie?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, right? Because
that's what I specialize in. Can I just say I'm all about complications and multi-sectional questions, and absolutely.
If you admire the figure, that's what's going to, I would say, bring you into the theater, but it's the 21st century, so sit you down in front of the screen or what have you. But if you really admire the figure, when things do go off script, when the events don't necessarily follow the original events, or that person isn't true to the figure that's being portrayed, that can make you really loathe the movie. And, it's not a labor movie by any means, but there was a big controversy a couple of years ago about the Freddie Mercury biopic.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the title of it. That was an example of a lot of people who really loved that figure sitting down to watch this movie, which was a well-made movie. It was a well-written script. It flowed through, but you looked at the historical events and they didn't add up. And a lot of people turned on that movie. The producers got their money, the tickets were sold, the streams were streamed, but I don't think people were as happy with that movie as they would have been if it was true to the events and true to the character.
Very interesting. Now, okay, so what's your pick in this category?
Well, when it comes to this category, I mean, I'm an actor like Andrea, so obviously I'm going to look at the performances. And there are some great performances in all of those films, particularly Cesar Chavez. I mean, he sings. He absolutely sings in that role. But the title of this category is Worker Power. Movies about worker power, not movies about a labor leader. And so when you look at the worker power on display in the movie, I've got to give it to Rustin. And that's kind of funny because it's not a labor movie per se. It's not about unions. What it is about is all of those people that Bayard Rustin brought together to make the March on Washington for jobs and civil rights happen, and how much time is spent in that movie focused in the room with people making phone calls, making flyers, making all of these connections happen. That's the electricity of a movement, and that's a real demonstration of worker power to me.
Yeah, I like that critique very much. I ended up in a different place, but I think that's a completely justifiable take on it. And let me also say, I thought Glenn Thurman's performance as A. Philip Randolph is sort of gives a gravity to the entire piece. I didn't particularly love. I wrote a piece about the movie where I praised his performance and praised that role to an extent, but I had some other critiques of the movie. But I ultimately voted for Cesar Chavez in this category, which I think was really underappreciated. I thought it showed Chavez as a man. It didn't portray him as a saint. There is this danger with people like Chavez and with King and Mandela and others that they're treated as a saint instead of as human beings who are struggling with very, very difficult circumstances. I think it's very blunt about his struggles. I think that it does show worker power. Some of the most disempowered people in our society, migrant farm workers, coming together and showing what they can do when they come together in union. But I thought the most important thing, and you, Harold, I agree with you on this, and that is, I thought the performances were unbelievable. Michael Luna, understated as Chavez. Every movie needs a great villain. And John Malkovich gives the most Malkovichian villain performance. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's just a beautiful thing to watch. The man can be evil and smile at you, and it chills you to the bone, and you're not even in the movie. But let me also say, America Ferrera, I just can't get enough. I put her in everything. I loved her as Cesar Chavez's co-leader and wife in this movie. So I thought that was great. But let's find out who the worker goes to. Let's make sure I have the right envelope. Let's open it up. And the worker for Best Worker Profile, Small Group or Individual goes to Cesar Chavez from 2014, directed by Diego Luna. Very, very nice. A little surprising. I have to say, I thought there would be some recency bias in favor of Rustin, and Rustin was produced by the Obamas. You think that would have gotten them over the top, but I don't think it didn't. I was very surprised.
You can stay up to date with the latest news about workers, worker power, and unions by subscribing to the Power at Work blog. You'll receive the weekly download, a Power at Work newsletter sent straight to your inbox. The weekly download collects about 24 of the week's articles, academic studies, press releases, podcasts, and videos from across the internet. We find the stories and deliver them directly to you. So subscribe to the weekly download right now on the front page of the Power at Work blog. Go to poweratwork.us.
Okay, let's turn to...
Seth,
yes.
Do you mind if I derail us just a moment? Before we move off this category, I really do want to encourage all of you, look on YouTube for 100,000 Men Named George.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal
10,000.
movie.
10,000. 10,000.
It's a phenomenal movie, but since we're talking about labor leaders, A. Philip Randolph is played by Andre Braugher, who, as you know, recently died.
Recently passed, yeah.
And if you want to see a great example of the power that Andre Braugher brought to his roles, 10,000 Black Men Named George. Fantastic example. So
I agree with you. I agree with you completely about that. In fact, in the piece that I wrote for the blog about Rustin, I called out the Obamas and I said, "Isn't it time to remake this movie as a tribute both to Andre Braugher and to A. Philip Randolph?" Surprisingly enough, they didn't return my call. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, okay. Here's category number 3: Best International Labor Movie, and by international labor movie we mean a movie produced outside the United States. And the nominees in this category are The Organizer. Mario Monicelli from Italy was the director from 1963. The Land from 1970, directed by Youssef Chahine from Egypt. Germinal from 1993, directed by Claude Berry from France. Made in Dagenham, or Dagenham, I guess it is, in England, from 2010, directed by Nigel Coles from Britain. And then The Factory from 2015, directed by Raoul Roy from India. Jennifer, again, I'd like to know your pick in this category. Do you think Americans, and I also want to ask you this question, do you think Americans look for the same thing in international films that they look for in domestic films? Or is it really a different experience? Are you saying to yourself, I'm going to have a totally different thing here?
I think that American audiences look for and like whatever resonates with them. Resonates with is now a kind of a catchphrase in theater, in film criticism. And so immediately, if it's another language, Americans have difficulty embracing. We're not the most worldly watchers, let's put it that way. So, yeah, I do think that Americans react differently. I think occasionally they'll know of a situation and be captivated by it. But mostly I think they're looking for film. And this is, I mean, maybe I'm being very dismissive or thinking audiences are not as smart as they really are. I don't know, but I think that we're not very worldly in that way. So. Okay,
so what was your pick in this category?
One of my favorite movies of all time, actually, and that's Made in Dagenham. I love that film. I absolutely adore Sally Hawkins. I think she can do no wrong. Bob Hoskins is divine in it. It's a story that's based in a true situation, and it's a true situation where workers brought a huge international American company to an absolute standstill and changed the entire picture for workers. Plus the fact that it's a very feminist film. It's women who are sticking together and working together and supporting each other and understanding each other. And I love that. That's my jam. So yeah, Made in Dagenham is definitely my pick here. And over everything, I don't have anything to say about any of the other films.
Okay, that's okay. So let me just say, you didn't mention that this film also features a fantastic villain played by Richard Schiff of West Wing fame, Toby Ziegler from West Wing fame. And boy, I hated him at the end of this movie. Oh my goodness, did I hate his guts because he was so villainous, and it was just perfect, absolutely perfect. Okay, Harold, what's your pick in this category? And I want to get you to think as broadly as possible. What did you love in these movies?
Oh, there's so many things to love. You know, the thing about foreign films is it doesn't matter what language they're in. It doesn't matter what the home culture is. There is something universal. There's a spark that everybody can grasp as they watch these films. And that's the thing about The Organizer that I really think carries through. This is an old black and white movie. I mean, it's hard to get a lot of people to watch old black and white movies these days. And it was made in 45, 47?
60, I think 63.
63. Okay,
is that what I said? 63 is when it was released, yeah.
But even so, the fire and the spark in those characters who are fighting for their rights, and in the organizer himself, even as things go against him and he's trying to make this work and to get people to stand up for themselves. You don't even need subtitles, really, to understand that depth of feeling. So yeah, that's a beautiful film, and it's really unfortunate that the only way most of you are going to be able to see it is if you pay Criterion Collection $45 or something like that. Sadly, that's most of the films in this category. It's really hard to find them.
Yeah,
but they're worth watching. But all that being said, I got to go with Jennifer. Made in Dagenham. I mean, that is such a tremendous film. Not just because of Bob Hoskins, not just because of Richard Schiff, but because of the energy that the workers bring. Bob Hoskins, for those of you who haven't seen it, he's the sort of union middleman in Made in Dagenham. And he plays a role against some corruption within the union. It has to be said. But this isn't a story about them. This is a story about women on the shop floor who stand up not only against Ford Motor Company, but against their own union to make sure their voices are heard. And by the end, you're cheering. I mean, it's definitely a feel-good movie. What's not to like?
Yeah. I felt that way about it as well. And also they're up against their families to some extent, against the men who are in their union. Andrea, I want to ask you this. So Made in Dagenham and Germinal have sort of worldwide fame actors in them, well-known actors, brand name actors in them. Does that affect how they're received? So some of these other movies, well, obviously the organizer has Marcello Mastroianni. Most people film lovers have heard of Marcello Mastroianni. Does that really give them a big advantage? Like at Academy time, does that give them a big advantage? Or just generally, does that give them a big advantage?
I mean, sure, Academy time, but one thing that's kind of interesting nowadays with Netflix, not that they're like it's the super pro union, as we found out last year, but Netflix, just the way that they do things, I find myself watching all kinds of things that I might not necessarily watch because it pops up. Like Blood and Water, I mean, it's like a soap, but it's a series from Zimbabwe. Now, season 3, they just said, oh, season 3 is up. And they're like, oh, yeah. Let me get back to watching that. I never would have found it, I don't think. I never would have looked for it, but it just pops up because Netflix thinks I like certain things, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. But I think that's with a lot of folks that it makes it so easy to watch things. And nowadays, since I'm probably like a lot of people who watch with the closed captions on anyway, so it's not that big of a deal whether it's closed caption and they're speaking English or not speaking English, because it's a regular. And it started because I was watching, I think, like Downton Abbey with a young friend who said, oh, can we put the closed caption on that? And to me, that was like an older thing. My mom used to need that. And I was thinking, oh, okay. And then I started regularly using it. And so it's just a thing. I think a lot of people are watching things that they wouldn't ordinarily watch.
Right. So what's your pick? What's your pick in this category?
With everybody else, I did enjoy Made in Dagenham. That was fun, and I always like Sally Hawkins.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
Sally Hawkins is terrific.
Can I interject something?
Jennifer.
Yeah, I just want to get back to the idea and to what Andrea is mentioning about films that are hard to find, and also films that allow a kind of have a discourse between them or from one to another, so that because they're presenting different aspects of a particular thing. So I wanted to mention 3 films that I think are all about labor that belong together in a binge watch, if you can find them on Netflix or Prime or wherever. The first of them is Salt of the Earth, and I think that that's an extremely important film to watch. not only because it's a good film and it's a seminal film, but also because it was directed by Herbert Biberman, who was a victim of the McCarthy era. And his career was just absolutely done. Again, I lived through that part of our history as well. I'm the oldest person in the room here. The second one is Bread and Roses, which is also about, again, these are Mexican workers. This is resonating with the Cesar Chavez film as well. Bread and Roses, a superb film. And the last one is Roma, which is also a really important film about the relationship between a worker and an employer. So I just wanted to mention that and get that in.
And Roma was an Academy Award winner, right?
Yes.
I believe it was an Academy Award winner. So let me just quickly throw my 2 cents in on this category. I want to emphasize the point that was made before about the universality of workers' experience in the world. And that is one of the reasons we wanted to have this category and why we wanted to talk about international film, is that even if there's different languages, even if they are, like in the case of The Factory and The Land, they're taking me inside worlds that I otherwise would never have seen. Dagenham Made in Dagenham is a world that I have seen in the United States, but those were worlds that were entirely new to me. But there is a core humanity, a core set of issues that workers face all over the world. Just a little critical note. I really wanted to love Germinal because of all those great American movies about coal mining, Harlan County, USA, Harlan County Wars, and several others, North Country. I wanted to love that movie, but good Lord, it was a strange movie, and there was some strange directing and acting choices in it. There's one character who's played like he's a silent film villain. It was just I couldn't figure out what they were doing, and I have difficulty looking at Gerard Depardieu now, given what we know about him as a human being. I ultimately voted also for Made in Dagenham. It's so entertaining, and it shows the joy and sisterhood and uplift that comes from solidarity, and that disempowered people, in that case women in the 1960s in England, can really change the world for themselves and for a lot of other people. And every now and then a rational man comes along and agrees with them. And I thought that was a nice thing to see. There was the obligatory husband being contrite scene that I could have done without, because it sort of, I'm not going to say anything about my relationship with my wife, but it didn't ring true to me. But I thought that there was more that there was something else they could have done there. But I thought it was just, on the whole, a wonderful movie. And I can't have enough Sally Hawkins either. I'm with you on that. Okay, so Best International Labor Film. The Worker goes to... The Worker for Best International Labor Movie goes to The Organizer from 1963. Directed by Mario Monicelli, starring Marcello Mastroianni. Just a couple of interesting side notes about it. That film had its premiere at the 35th Congress of the Italian Socialist Party. I've never been to a premiere party like that. I don't know what you all have experienced. And the script was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the 37th Academy Awards, but it did not win. Maybe one of you knows who won. I don't actually know who won. Okay, our penultimate category, that's second to last for those of you at home, and that is Best Documentary. The nominees are, and Jennifer mentioned it earlier, Harlan County, USA from 1976, directed by Barbara Koppel. The Wobblies from 1979, directed by Stuart Bird and Deborah Schaffer. American Dream from 1990, also directed by Barbara Koppel. The Hand That Feeds from 2014, directed by Robert Blotnick and Rachel Lears. And 9 to 5, not the Dolly Parton, Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda movie, but 9 to 5, The Story of a Movement, 2020, directed by Julia Reichert and Stephen Bognar. Now, I'm not going to ask you a bunch of added questions because I really want to focus on the film. So what I really want to know, Harold, let me start with you, is what was your pick in this category? And did you find yourself choosing between 2 or 3 movies, or was there one obvious favorite in this category for you?
No, this was a tough one. This was a really tough one. All of those films are really solid. And I lean towards 9 to 5 simply because it's got a long history, but it's got some really compelling characters. One of the things I love about a well-made documentary is how you look at these real people and they take on that same mystique that a character in a narrative film would take on. You want to follow them. You want them to win, or sometimes you want them to lose, right? But with that in mind, I just kept coming back to Harlan County, USA, which it goes over so many years, and you see the arcs of so many people as they go through this struggle, including some of the people you don't like. And while it's not explicit, you see the toll that this struggle has taken on them. And that to me it's drama. You know, I mean, there is so much drama around this, aside from the events, aside from the reality of what these people are dealing with. It's a dramatic story being told. And yeah, it sticks with me today, and it was probably 35 years since I saw it for the first time.
Yeah. Andrea, same question for you. What was your pick, and did you find yourself choosing between 2 or 3 or more movies in this category?
Full disclosure, I didn't see all of them. And I saw some of them. And what's driving me crazy is I can't remember the name of it. But if I was going to choose one, there was a film about the fight for $15 an hour for minimum wage, and that would be my pick of documentary. I just, and it has a catchy name to it too, but I just can't remember the name. And it's all about that whole fight that started with one guy and then everybody else with the fast food places and in general with the $15 an hour. And that's the movie that stayed with me. And I really loved that one for labor. And it just inspired me for any kind of a labor movement. And it was, it's ongoing and pretty strong, and they made some big gains. I don't know if anyone else knows the name of the film.
I know the one you're talking about, actually, but I can't remember the name either.
Yeah, it has a really catchy name.
It's really, there's a lot of energy to it.
Okay, so we're gonna call on our audience to tweet at Andrea or post it somewhere, and so we'll find it that way, and that's a way to promote the film to everybody in the universe as well, and we'll share it. Power at Work blog will share it if you tweet it out there. Jennifer, what was your pick in this category for best documentary? And did one movie just stand out from these 5, or from the whole list? Or because you've mentioned a number of documentaries today in answer to other questions, or were you choosing between 2 or 3 movies?
Well, I could mention a lot of different documentaries in this category, but I gotta say, they say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a dirty a union man, or a scab for J.H. Blair. I'm with Harlan County. I think it's a brilliant film. It was collected over very sensitively by Barbara Koppel, and beautifully edited by Nancy Baker. And I think it's a masterpiece that will stand for the ages. It's a stunning film. I think it probably is and should be taught in schools, both film schools and every other kind of school that we have, because it's such a fine example of documentary filmmaking, of telling the truth through film and of making movies that matter.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just have to say, if I can, Barbara Koppel has 2 movies in this category. One is Harlan County, and the other one is American Dream. Barbara Koppel got a lot of flack with Harlan County because she didn't show both sides, right? To my way of looking at things, that's not the job of a documentarian. If a documentarian is telling the story of these events, they're telling the story that they want to tell. It's not their job to necessarily go into the boardroom and have the other side have a chance to make their case.
We don't need that. We don't need the union avoidance consultant on camera explaining why workers should not join a union. You don't think that? Okay.
We very much don't. She did that in American Dream. American Dream is still an incredibly well-made film, but it's not as focused as Harlan County. It dithers. You know, it's tragic in the end, in that the workers who put up all this struggle just you know, they don't win, and things are horrible in Austin, Minnesota at the beginning and at the end. But I think Harlan County is a stronger film because she found the narrative and she told the narrative. So that's just the case I would make there.
Just another thing interesting that you mentioned that there are two Barbara Koppel films in this category and her different approach in both. But I think it's also perhaps a good idea to point out that the times had changed. 1976, the political context was very different from what it was in 1990. And I think that, just to interject that's something that we need to look at and consider as well.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true. The view of unions in the 70s and union power in the 70s and union strike activity in the 70s, very different from what we saw when she made American Dream. Okay, so I feel like I'm the outlier in all of these categories. I voted for The Hand That Feeds, which frankly I had never even heard of before we began this Labor Oscars process. But I used this process as a way to expose myself to a whole bunch of new movies that I would love to say I had always wanted to watch them, and I had them on. I didn't even have this movie on a list. I had never heard of it. But bringing up this list of 55 labor films that we shared with the world on the Power at Work blog, it was on there, and I watched it, and it was amazingly compelling. There, as Harold mentioned before, there are arcs in the story. There are twists and turns. You can see the characters developing and responding to the events. It doesn't feel like everybody is just performing for the camera, and it doesn't have the problem that too many documentaries have, what I call talking head disease, where it's just a side shot or a straight on shot of a human being talking, which is probably the least interest, unless it's the St. Crispin's Day speech, right? And Kenneth Branagh is delivering it. It's not a particularly interesting thing to watch. In fact, I felt that was one of my criticisms of 9 to 5, which is an excellent documentary. And I've known Karen Nussbaum for a million years, and she's one of the lead characters in it. This movie has a lot of voiceovers of people moving around New York City, my hometown, which is very exciting and bright and colorful. And they just are able to show action throughout the movie. The villains are unseen and unheard. They are talked about, but they are never heard from. That's actually very much like Harlan County, although you see some of the villains in Harlan County. And so I found it very surprisingly compelling. And it's about an effort to organize one of these small breakfast shops in New York City. The Occupy movement gets involved. A worker center is very, very deeply involved, and there's some very compelling characters. I just loved it. And let me just say, it was extremely hard for me to not vote for Harlan County, USA. That documentary was released when I was 14 years old, and it had an immense impact on my just my view of the world. My parents were big labor advocates, very left people, but there was something about that movie, the way it portrayed the lives of working people I had never encountered in my life, and the struggles that they went through. It's seared in my memory. I can remember scenes from that documentary, even today, all these years later. And so I easily could have voted for Harlan County in this category, but I guess I'm a contrarian. I guess I decided to go with something different. So let's find out who our voters chose in the best documentary category. So we don't have any playoff music. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. I could have let you go as long as you wanted. There's no playoff music here. The Worker for the best documentary goes to Harlan County, USA from 1976. directed by Barbara Koppel. It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary at the 49th Academy Award ceremony. I think unsurprising. It was well deserved at the time.
Public professionals, would you like to learn how data, digital innovation, and AI skills can improve your work and help you serve your constituents better? The answer is Innovate US. Innovate US offers no-cost learning on the skills you need to succeed in government in the 21st century. Attend a 1-hour weekly workshop or enroll in a course on AI or human-centered design at your own pace. It's all free to you. Visit innovate-us.org today to learn more and sign up. That's Innovate-US. Visit right now.
Okay, we have reached our final award, and it is the big one. And it didn't take us 3 hours, right? We're not 45 minutes over time here. We're right on time. It's the excellence of the MC that makes that possible. Okay, so in the Best Feature Film category, the nominees are On the Waterfront from 1954, directed by Elia Kazan, starring, of course, the great Marlon Brando. Norma Ray from 1979, directed by Martin Ritt. Matewan, Jennifer mentioned it earlier, Matewan from 1987, directed by John Sayles. Bread and Roses, also mentioned earlier, from 2000, directed by Ken Loach. And Rustin from just last year, 2023, directed by George C. Wolfe. Okay, so we have built up the suspense. Our viewers are on the edge of their seats. They've put their phones on Do Not Disturb, and we have a menu of what I think are genuinely great films. Not just great labor films, but great films. Now, I'm going to approach this one a little bit differently before we reveal the winner. So instead of asking you what your pick was in this category, I'm going to ask you which film you think our voters chose in this category. So, because this is a test of our guests, this is a test of the three of you to see if you have your finger on the pulse of American culture and how labor academics, trade unionists, labor journalists, labor policymakers, the people who make up the subscriber base of the Power at Work blog, think about film and culture. Okay, Andrea, which film do you think is going to take home the Worker for Best Feature Film?
This is funny because one time I won the SAG Awards when we have our local SAG Awards party, and we vote for what we think's going to win. And I decided to be really cynical that year. And that's what, so I didn't vote for what I wanted. I voted for what I thought would win. And I won the prize that year. So that's the thing.
Well, but, I should have started by saying there are no prizes here. Yeah. There's actually not even a Worker. I should have had like a mock-up of a Worker. I don't even have that. We have like a graphic, but anyway. Okay, so
well, it's funny because each film has a different kind of a feeling, because I think of like Norma Ray, and at least for me, that was one where it inspired me. It showed me about unions. I mean, I knew some stuff before, but that was a really thing. And then during our SAG-AFTRA strike at the Boston Labor Breakfast with all the Labor Council, Michelle Proud, who was a former president and now VP of mid-sized local, got up and had the sign that said union. And it was a great photo, you know, of Michelle with the union sign up there. And I mean, nobody ever, that's like, if people remember anything, that's what they remember from that film. Probably don't even remember what the union was or anything like that, but you remember that. And then when I think about On the Waterfront, a classic that once again, I'm putting on my actor hat because little known thing at that time, Rod Steiger was really famous, but Marlon Brando was new.
Right.
So in that big scene, you know, I could have been a contender. When it was on Marlon Brando, Rod Steiger wasn't there because he couldn't be bothered. You know, and it's usually a thing that you do. The other actor is there, even if they're off camera. They just, you know, it's a courtesy. But he wasn't there, so Marlon Brando didn't actually do it to Rod Steiger. So that's kind of a funny thing on that one. And what, like, it depends on I don't know who the audience is. So if it's a certain kind of audience, I'm going to say Matewan, because, you know, I would think that if it's a certain sturdy kind of thing, and finally we at least get the part about Black folks and labor, because that's the thing on the unions, is that little known fact, we weren't invited in a lot of the time.
Exactly.
And we were considered the enemy. And even if you wanted to join, even SAG-AFTRA, I mean, you know, you have Ethel Waters. SAG-AFTRA didn't support her when she won and say, hey, she needs to have a place to sit. She needs to be nope. So, you know, there's that. But I guess I'm going to say, I don't know how age. So it's between Matewan and Norma Ray, what I think they'd choose.
We'll let you choose two. We'll let you choose two. We gave Jennifer the courtesy earlier, so that's okay. Okay, Jennifer.
And do I get to say what I chose, or is that later?
You can if you'd like. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
Mine is Rustin, even though it's more of a community film and civil rights than it is actual labor. But that was it for me. I mean, just the whole way that that he got the community together, and was all about how all of that actually works and how organizing works. And it was a lot the way we had to do it here for SAG-AFTRA for that strike, which was new to most if not all of us. I don't know many of us who had actually been involved in a strike, maybe in rallies and things. Certainly I grew up with civil rights, but not an actual strike. So we learned all the rules and things like that.
I mean, our last
strike and rally and a photo shoot.
Our last big strike was like in the 80s, wasn't it, Andrea? It was a long time ago. Members like me, you know, we'd never been on strike. So yeah, it was a whole thing.
Yeah. That's Rustin does an excellent job of showing the work of organizing in a way that a lot of films really don't. Okay, Jennifer, which film do you think wins, and what's your pick?
You know, I have absolutely no idea of who the audience is here. So I would hesitate to answer that, actually, because it's kind of, you know, pure speculation based on nothing. I would like to mention another film here, though, however, and that is a new film called Origin, directed by Ava DuVernay. And the reason that I mention it here...
Brand new.
Yes, it's brand new, but the reason that I mention it here is that it is not specifically about labor, but it is very specifically about workers versus exploiters, which is basically what labor films are about. And the exploiters are redefined as a class of bullies who identify a population, a group, an ethnic group, or a disabled group, or whatever kind of group, as being lesser than or unworthy, and exploit them to the extent where they are destroyed. Their community is destroyed, they are physically destroyed, they are eventually disposed of, used up, and gone. And there are three populations that are referred to in the film. It's a narrative film that's based on a book. I can't remember the title of the book, but
Cast.
Yes.
Cast.
Yes. And I think it's very important for whoever is watching this podcast to know that there is a bigger discussion that goes on here about films and labor and the relationship between people and groups and racism and the way in which we either respect or do not respect and embrace all of each other as equal and humane. Very important film that I would recommend that everybody see. As for my best feature, it's without doubt Norma Ray. I love that film. I loved Sally Field in it. Again, that union sign going up. I mean, it was, you know, a moment of triumph. And this is a film that shows how a person who doesn't identify as political or radical or anything at all can emerge as a leader, as a person who inspires collective thinking, collective bargaining. And we need people like that in our culture, in our society today. We desperately need them because everything is falling apart, communities falling apart, blah, blah, blah. I could go on and on about this. I'm sure that we all could. I don't want to. But, I mean, that's why it's so interesting that you're doing this particular kind of an Oscar or a worker award show, because it's focusing on something that's very important right now. So anyway, my answer to that is Norma Ray.
Norma Ray, I couldn't agree with you more that it's important that we're doing this and that you're participating in it. Okay, Harold, you're going to have the last word. Who do you think people picked and who did you pick? And I'm going to ask you to do it a little bit quickly because we're way over time already.
And you said there was no music to play us off.
Yeah, I didn't have music. Just my sonorous voice is all we really have.
Well, I'm easy. Norma Ray. In fact, I just have to say, Seth, that when all this is said and done and Norma Ray wins, you should just rename these awards from the workers to the Normas. Because if you want to talk about an iconic labor movie that everybody thinks of immediately when they think of union movie, it's Norma Ray. And
yeah, but Norma Ray is not a real. Norma Ray is not a real person. We were originally going to name this after Mother Jones, call them the Jonesies, but everybody said that sounds stupid. We don't want to do that, so we came up with the worker. But I want to acknowledge we need to rebrand the award. But against the fictional character, I don't know. There's a real person behind that fictional character, but anyway.
I got two things on that. Number one,
okay.
I do think you need to rebrand because you're calling this the Labor Oscars. And the Oscars themselves, it has to be said, were in many ways an effort to stop Hollywood from unionizing.
Oh,
when the founders of SAG were starting to get together, all of a sudden, the studios decided maybe they should give the workers an awards show. It was a big star-studded pizza party. Now, that's not necessarily where we are now, but labor, Oscars, when it comes to the idea of naming the award after a fictional character, I think that goes back to our discussion that we had earlier about whether a biopic has to be exactly accurate.
Oh.
Because I think those fictional inaccuracies can sometimes make for a better movie. You compress things, you tell a story. I'm not going to say that the inspiration for Norma Ray, her exact story shouldn't be told, but when people think of labor movie, they think of Sally Field holding up that cardboard sign. Whether she's real or whether she's fictional, she's an icon unto herself. So
she is.
Take that for what it's
okay.
worth.
I'm not gonna give my answer because we're gonna get right to the winner. Here's the envelope. That'll end up being the screenshot that everybody gets, my face that I just made trying to open it. The winner for Best Feature Film goes to Norma Ray from 1979, directed by Martin Ritt, starring Sally Field in the title role, Beau Bridges, Ron Liebman. A couple of facts about it. The film received 4 nominations at the 52nd Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It won 2. Best Actress for Sally Field, which generated one of the most repeated clips from the Academy Awards ever. And that is Sally Field saying, "You like me, you really, really like me," which, let me just say, happens to be true. I really, really like her. But it also won for Best Original Song for its theme song, "It Goes Like It Goes." And the film is based, and here's the fact that I wanted to get out, the film is based on the true story of Crystal Lee Sutton, which is told in the 1975 book, Crystal Lee, A Woman of Inheritance. So there it is. Labor Oscars 2024. I want to thank Harold, Andrea, Jennifer for your expert advice, your good humor, your willingness to play along with this goofy idea that we came up with. Thank you so much for being with us, and we're going to get you back here again when we do Labor Oscars 2025. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Seth.
So you made it through Labor Oscars 2024, maybe the shortest award show anywhere in America. We're delighted to have you here for this blogcast. Thanks for sticking through to the end. We hope we introduced you to some labor movies that you didn't know about or that you want to watch again after our discussion. If we want filmmakers to make honest, powerful, influential films about workers, worker power, unions, and collective action, we need to support those films. We need to support the good films about labor topics. And that's what the Labor Oscars is all about, supporting labor movies and supporting the people depicted in those movies. If you'd like to support the Power at Work blog, connect with us on social media. We have pages on LinkedIn and Facebook. Just search Power at Work blog. You can find us at Power at Work blog on Twitter, X, and Threads. You can find us at Power at Work on Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon as well. And you can find all the Power at Work blogcasts on YouTube on the Burns Center for Social Change channel. The very best way you can show your support and participate in events like Labor Oscars 2024 is to go to the front page of the Power at Work blog right after this blogcast and subscribe to the Power at Work blog. We'll keep you up with the content. We'll send you the weekly download, and whenever we have an event like this, we will be sure to include you. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you back here on the blog again very soon.
The Power at Work blog is a project of the Burns Center for Social Change at Northeastern University. The Burns Center develops innovative, participatory, and equitable approaches to solving public problems using new technology. Our faculty and fellows are accomplished, nationally recognized changemakers. Interested in learning more? Go to burns.northeastern.edu and sign up for our mailing list. And you can follow us on social media at Burns Center on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. The Burns Center for Social Change, from demanding change to making it.